Jim and Will. What have they been watching lately? They're husky, hairy, huggable homos. Movie Bears Podcast.
Sometimes I wish you could see us all dancing to the theme song as it's playing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Movie Bears Podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to review films either current or classic. And this week we got two current films coming at you. We're going to be reviewing the new Space Jam film, Space Jam: A New Legacy. I'm interested to see what the guys think about this movie. We'll also be reviewing Old, the new suspense thriller from M. Night Shyamalan. So a lot to talk about, a whole lot to get going here. But before we dive in, let me introduce you to my phenomenal, wondrous, fantastic co-host, Jim Pugliafico.
Don't build me up too much, please. You're the wonderful one for hosting us each and every show. And I'm kind of excited about this lineup. This is going to be a fun one, I think, one way or the other.
I agree, and thank you for the sweet words, sweetheart. I really appreciate that. But literally couldn't do it without you. And of course, William Lindis, who is also here. Welcome, Will. How's it going?
Hey, Brad. Hey, Jim. It's going rather well, actually. Man, we were just talking before we came on the air about how we used to do little portmanteaus of our titles when we were doing double features, and how fitting it would be to call this one Old Jam. So welcome to our Old Jam episode, everybody.
Oh, goodness. This is going to be a great conversation. I can tell already. Guys, we have some folks joining us in the live stream, in the live chat. Jordan Riley says, "Hey, Bears." Hey, Jordan. Good to see you.
Good to see Jordan.
Hey, Jordan.
Again.
Yeah. Jordan has been posting some pictures of his new haircut and beard trims on Facebook lately, and I've been a little sexy triggered. I'll just
been a little thirsty, have you?
A little thirst. Ooh, good thing I got a Gatorade. The only thing to quench that thirst.
Gatorade
is an alternative.
The official drink of the NBA and Warner Brothers.
And apparently the Movie Bears Podcast.
I'm about to say, what is the official drink of the Movie Bears Podcast? Actually, it sounds like the official drink of the Movie Bears Podcast is whoever pays us first to say they're the official drink of the Movie Bears Podcast. So sponsors, let's get on that.
Yeah, get in line, sponsors.
There we go.
Well, what are you drinking?
I am drinking some HEB, our local grocery chain, so plug for them. Sweetened cherry sparkling water. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
We'd take a sponsorship from HEB or from Gatorade. Yeah.
Or why not both?
Yeah, let's do both.
You could have two drinks. That's completely okay.
HEB, the official grocery chain of husky, hairy, huggable homos.
Oh, goodness. Does that make us the 4-H men?
I think it does. And also in sort of filling this kind of reference out. It's a super local Texas chain here, but the B actually stands for butts. And I'm not that's not a gag. H.E. Butts is the name of the dude that founded the company or whatever. So it's fitting. It's on brand for us.
Harry something butts. That's what we need to. That's what we would have to sell it as if they did sponsor us.
Harry enlarged butts.
There we go.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that a little.
Yeah, we'll workshop it a little, but wait, hold on. I'm getting a call right here from HEB's lawyers who said this bit has gone on for too long and we should stop. Oh, sorry, HEB.
Sorry, HEB. Whatever. Tony Gilkinson is in the chat. Hey, Tony. He says, "Hey guys, is the Arizona Sonoran hot dog the official hot dog for the Movie Bears Podcast?"
Ooh. That's only if you don't count kolaches as hot dogs, right? Because somebody might make that, but kolaches are kolaches and hot dogs are hot dogs. So yes, Sonoran hot dog can be the the official hot dog of MBP. But kolaches are the official breakfast. Breakfast. What do we want to call it? Breakfast pastry. Breakfast.
Breakfast
Sandwich.
Actually breakfast.
Breakfast.
Like the official breakfast. Yeah.
Right.
Breakfast. Well, all I know is we got to get back to a movie festival with you, Will, in person next year. Hopefully, things are getting crazy again. Mask mandates are going back into place.
Yeah.
Who knows what the world will look like in a few months. But my hope is that we can all take on Tony to hairy, eager butts, pick up some good snacks, and dive into some movies together. That would be super fun. But while we can't do it in person right now, we can do it here on the show. And as we mentioned earlier, we've got not one, but 2 films to review. Jim and Will, how do you feel? Are you ready to get into Space Jam?
Yeah,
I'm ready
let's go.
I'm ready to slam and welcome to the jam. So yeah.
Yeah, whatever that song is.
But that's all, folks, on the intro to this movie. Actually, just kidding. There is a little bit more. We're going to talk about Space Jam completely spoiler-free for the first probably 10 minutes or so, and then we'll give you a fair warning before we go into spoilers. So if you haven't seen Space Jam: A New Legacy yet, just know we'll give you our recommendations on whether we enjoyed watching it, if it was good to go seek out, and then we'll give you that spoiler warning. So, guys, let's do this. Here we go. Our review of Space Jam: A New Legacy. Fellas, I don't know if you saw it, but Sean Gibson just said, "Hey, gorgeous."
Hey, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Hello. Hi. Hey. Thank you.
I'm digging his little avatar there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I love the color. Plus, he's a mega handsome man.
Yeah. If he was, I'm going to have to blow him up on my screen to see.
Well, I have the pleasure of being Facebook friends, so I know. I've seen Sean on a much bigger canvas.
Hold on one second.
Sure you have.
I am going to Facebook stalk. Oh, hello, Sean.
Right?
How are you doing?
All right, let's get this Space Jam: A New Legacy party rocking and rolling. Jim, if you don't mind, spoiler free, of course, but just give us the brief setup of Space Jam: A New Legacy, as well as your initial thoughts. Was this worth seeing in theaters, watching at home, or skipping entirely?
Sure. So we have this movie that is set in a shared Warner Brothers virtual serververse, where not really outer space, but it's a serververse. So it could be like inner space, I guess. The film follows superstar LeBron James from the NBA. Oh, and by the way, that's pro basketball for any non-sports ball fans or friends that we have listening. He's in the NBA and he's very, very, very good player. One of the best, maybe the best, currently playing. So he teams up with the Looney Tunes gang on a team called the Toon Squad in a basketball match against a team of digitized champions called the Goon Squad to rescue his young son, Dom, who's been kidnapped by a rogue artificial intelligence. So that's there's really no spoilers there. It's all in the trailer. So I approach this movie a little differently maybe than some. I never did see the first Space Jam movie. This is the second one. I do know very little about the first one. I think we watched the trailer, and that's about all I know about the first movie. But I went into this saying, okay, this movie really isn't up my alley. I am a Looney Tunes guy. I grew up with Looney Tunes, like a lot of people did. The Looney Tunes cartoons, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Tweety Bird, Yosemite Sam, Tasmanian Devil, all of that stuff is really cool. And I know LeBron James. I'm not the biggest NBA fan, but I know LeBron James, and I wanted to see what this what this movie was all about. Maybe we could have some fun with it. And going in, like I said, wasn't sure this would be my jam.
I'm going to give you a space because of that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I mean, that joke was a bit of a layup.
And this movie is not what I would consider a good movie. But then again, this movie is not aimed at me. Obviously, it's not. It's definitely not aimed in my wheelhouse. But I think for what it does, I think it's fine. I think I actually had some fun with this movie. There's some things in this movie I like. There's a lot of things that I rolled my eyes at and were really clunky. And we're like, I can't wait for this movie to end because I know how it's gonna end. There was nothing necessarily about the story or the cinematically that had me interested, but there were some things in this that I think were pretty good. But I did have fun, and lo and behold, and I talked to Brad about this later, I know this movie is going to land with some people because when we watched it at a matinee on the weekend in a movie theater, people were clapping at the end of this movie. I cannot tell you when the last time I went to a movie where people actually clapped at the end, like not clapped because it was over, but clapped because they were really enjoyed, what happened in the movie. And we'll get into spoilers later. So that's why I say I don't think this movie was aimed at me, but I think for the audience that it aims at, I think it lands. So if you are, maybe like an NBA fan, I think you might be able to find something in here you like. If you're a Looney Tunes guy, you may be able to find some things in here you like. LeBron James, if you like LeBron James, you might be able to find some things in here you like. Although I got to be honest, LeBron James's acting is really bad. Just like, yes, his line delivery is like you could have put a robot in the movie and gotten something a little bit better. But there's some fun stuff in here from Don Cheadle. I thought the actor that played Dom, who is LeBron James' son in here, Cedric Joe is his name. I thought he did a fine job. For a young kid, I think he did pretty good. I don't know what else he's been in. And we'll talk about more of this movie. I'm going to say, yeah, if this is something you think you like, you might resonate with, I think this movie is fine for families with young kids. I think this movie will hit just fine. But if you're looking for any kind of cinematic art piece or to get something like unexpected out of this movie, I don't think you're going to get that. So I think this for me is a mild recommend. Just know that this movie knows its audience, and if that's not you, it may miss.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing those thoughts, babe. Before we go on to hear what Will thought, Ben Woolley is in the house. He says, "Hi, sexy bears. Hey, Mr. Sexy yourself. Welcome to the show."
Hey, Ben. We've got an absolute rogues gallery lined up today, and I'm here for it. It feels like we've got our own version of it's in the trailer, so I feel okay saying this. There's a lot of characters standing in the background of the basketball game watching.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've got our version of that here, our own Movie Bears podcast verse of audience. But I love it.
And Will, just like maybe your experience with this movie, it may be more fun to pay attention to what's going on in the background of the movie than the actual main event itself. I caught myself several times, in between the fast edits, trying to catch, who is that character? Who's that character? Oh, look who that is. That's McGilligarillo or whoever. That's the kind of stuff that so I had some fun with this film.
Oh, good. I'm glad that the bevy of Easter eggs was a delight to you. That's awesome.
Kind of, yeah.
All right, Will, how about you? Where did you come down on this one?
This was not for me. We'll get here in a moment into a couple of things that I did enjoy about this movie. There are moments, there are individual scenes that I thought were really fun or that like played with the premise in an interesting way, but those felt like they were so fleeting and that I really had to like dig for those moments that it really becomes like, for me to praise the movie for those moments would almost feel disingenuous because I feel like I'd have to go out of my way to find those. I think that, first of all, I feel like this movie has a little bit of an identity issue in that the first movie, the Space Jam that came out in the 90s, was not a very good movie either, honestly. Like, it was not a good movie. Michael Jordan could not act. The story was not super good, but there's something sort of like weirdly nostalgic and of its time with that film. And so it's still like, I think a lot of people remember it fondly, but almost as if we were all kind of a little in on the joke in some ways, you know, like we had a good time with the movie, recognizing that it was, you know, not great at the time. This movie feels like it wants to capture all of that. And so it's copying the ingredients, but it's not copying the reason those ingredients were used in the first place. So while we have some things in here that I think are probably even legitimately better on paper, like LeBron James's story in this is all about his character arc is when you're this amazing professional who's at the top of your game, how do you become a mentor to someone whose experiences and whose passions are not the same as your own? And I think that that's a really compelling story, and it is when they get to it through the movie. Like, there's some parts where it does feel heartfelt, but it also feels kind of clunky, and it doesn't fully like deliver on that promise. The Looney Tunes in here, there are moments where they feel like themselves and they get to do some kind of wild and wacky shit. There are also some moments that feel as though they are really catering to almost like a nostalgic cringe factor when trying to set up some of these gags. There are references to a lot of the Warner properties, which is the big thing. There's so many references to Warner properties that I struggle to wonder how many of those would actually land with a kid. Like, you know, if we're talking like when you look at the characters that are in the background, when you look at the characters that when they visit some of the different scenes or when they interact with the Warner characters more directly, I don't know how many of those like your young audience is going to super relate to. So that means that I think this movie is more geared towards people who are more my age, who maybe were kids when the first Space Jam was out, and it wants to sort of like help us try to recapture that. But I don't think it does a good job of it. LeBron's not a good actor. Don Cheadle does not do a good job in this movie. And that sucks because I love Don Cheadle, but I feel like his delivery was just really wonky. The references themselves, and I don't want to say what the references are to save those, but only like one of them, one that Wile E. Coyote gets to visit, kind of worked. A lot of the other ones, again, feel like a reach or feel like they're out of place here. Even when the characters show up in the background, like the thing that we're supposed to be excited about, like pausing and looking and seeing all the characters in the background, they don't actually feel like the actual characters. They feel like little avatars of the character. I feel like it looked like a scene in like Ready Player One when like all of the like different properties are waving and doing stuff, but you know that in Ready Player One, that's not the actual characters. That's not the Iron Giant. That's not Batman. That's not Scooby-Doo. That's a dude in basically digital cosplay of that. And that's kind of what I felt in the audience when you look and you see like the characters from A Clockwork Orange hanging out with the characters from Batman and Scooby-Doo, and they're all just like doing random audience cheering moments. It feels like why have that in there? What are these Easter eggs doing for me? I don't know. I very much disliked this movie. There were like two scenes that I liked. Even the CGI, once we get into CGI, looks just sort of the CGI looks fine, but it also looks dull and unmemorable. That's the big takeaway from this movie. The original Space Jam had a lot of cringe in it, but it felt like it was at least sincerely placed cringed, and we could sort of like roll our eyes with the movie. This one, I felt like it, at the same time as doing that cringe, it committed the most cardinal sin I find in movies, which is boring me. The fact that it was able to do both of those things is a huge mark. I struggle. I really hope there's not a movie this year that's worse than this one, because this is sort of like my bottom barrel right now. Sorry.
Well, we got another movie coming up on the show, Will, so there might be another chance. Don't get there yet. Don't. Yeah. Don't.
Oh goodness. All right, we got a mild recommend from Jim. Will, I'm assuming this is a definitive not recommend from you.
Look, I think that there's a certain part of like being part of the zeitgeist that's important. And so like if you grew up on Space Jam, watch it. I mean, especially if you have HBO Max already and can just sort of like watch it as part of an existing subscription. I think there's something to be said for being a part of the conversation. But I mean, just based on like, is this a good movie or not? Yes or no? Then yeah, no. I mean, watch literally anything else.
We'll put that on the new movie poster. Watch literally anything else. Yeah, I think for me, I fall somewhere in between the two of you, and that's a happy place for me to be. I wouldn't say that I liked this movie a ton, and I wouldn't say that I absolutely like hated this film. There were some things that I kind of enjoyed. There was a lot that I didn't enjoy, so I just kind of end up somewhere in the middle. It was fun seeing the Looney Tunes back on the big screen. I've been watching the new Looney Tunes show that came out, and of course, Animaniacs is now back, and so I've been in a little bit of a Warner Brothers, I don't know, phase, if you will. But I don't know. Something about the Looney Tunes just fell really flat for me in this iteration of Space Jam, this new legacy. Without getting into spoilers, I feel like the mechanism that the film uses for like, you know, getting the team together and getting things going just super drags on. And then by the time we get to like the main event, I just didn't care that much anymore. And I think that was a little unfortunate. Pacing could have been a lot better there. I'll say too that I don't know, some of the stuff with LeBron James was just delivered so horribly, so horrendously, so abysmally, so whatever other word ending in Mali you want to use, that it just constantly kept taking me out of the movie. Not that Michael Jordan was that great in the first one either, but like, I don't know, when he's like talking about Insta and, you know, his followers and his fans, and I'm just like, Jesus freaking tap dancing Christ on a cracker. Like, is this a LeBron James self jerk off movie, or is this, you know, like an actual movie? I know, Jim, I see you shaking your head, you know, but like for me, that's what it felt like. Like a LeBron love letter to himself. And that's like the worst shade of, I don't know, cringe for me. I did enjoy some of the stunt casting that showed up in this film. We had a question in the chat earlier from Sean. He says, what did you guys think of Zendaya as Lola Bunny? I love the Lola Bunny character in this film. That's probably one of the highlights for me. When we get into spoilers, I want to talk about like her introduction and how she came to be part of the team. But she was great. I think Zendaya did a wonderful job myself, personally. So is this a recommend? I guess if you love Looney Tunes and basketball, sure. But I mean, in terms of it being just like a fun, great movie to watch, I don't know. I would say wait for rental, but it's already available to stream through HBO Max. So I don't fucking know. Yeah, I guess it's like the most softest ever of recommends for me, under very conditional circumstances. But otherwise, no, it's a pass.
Okay.
The Lola thing's interesting. I think that Zendaya did a really good job with the character as written. I think that one of the things that feels off about the character we've had 3 iterations of her so far, right? There was like the 90, like she was created sort of like as part of like the 90s one. And her thing was she was Girl Bunny who was really good at basketball. And we have a version of that now here. And I think Zendaya is fine with it. I love Zendaya. But in between, they worked her over into like the Looney Tunes cartoons, and they decided to like sort of like give her something other than like I'm good at basketball as a personality. And so Kristen Wiig was been the voice actors for a while, and we get the character as a little bit more like scatterbrained and sort of all over the place there, and she fits the mold of like what a Looney Tunes character is there. And I feel like some of that got pulled away in the creation of this version here. Like she doesn't fit with the rest of the group, which, you know, is fine, but I don't know, it felt like a bit of a reversion of course back to just kind of the old, like, you know, her personality is girl. And I kind of liked where she was before, and I don't know. It's just a fucking cartoon bunny. I'm not like too worked up over it. But
so you're bringing a bunny character bias from like. See, I didn't know anything really about Lola, and I liked her character because she seemed like she was a really grounded character, and for some reason that really stood out from the other Looney Tunes characters for me, and I think the movie kind of needed that a little bit, because otherwise you just have these characters off doing crazy stuff. And she felt like a real character to me more than any of the other cartoon ones. So, and yeah, I loved her voice. I don't know much about Zendaya actually, but I did love the characterization of Lola.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just sort of like, I think you can have that grounded character. I think you run the risk though of like, if you erode the thing that makes the character to have that, like, so that'd be the same thing as like if that was like, just pick any of the other ones. If like Yosemite Sam, like his whole thing was just like, instead of like rootin' tootin' and shooting pistols, if his arc was like, you know, like more like a, you know, a grounded, like emotional one, it would be like, well, that was cool, I guess. But like,
yeah, well, or what the fuck did they do to him?
But that's not Yosemite Sam, and I think that's a little bit of it.
Yeah,
I gotcha.
Yeah.
All right,
I didn't
fellas.
know Lola. I didn't know Lola coming in, but yeah, let's get into some spoilers and some of these awesome comments.
Yeah,
yeah,
most definitely. There's a lot happening here. All right, I'll just say that spoilers from this point forward are officially fair game for Space Jam: A New Legacy. If you've not yet seen the film, now's your chance to bounce for 15 minutes and then come on back for our discussion of M. Night Shyamalan's Old. You have been warned. Spoilers are indeed officially ready and rocking to go. Where do you guys want to start?
I'd like to praise the movie for a second, because I've been negative. I'm going to continue to be negative. So I'd like to just sort of like get my like
Slip
positivity out of the way while it's fresh of mind. There were 2 scenes in this that I did really like, or 2 gags really like, and you know, it's Looney Tunes, so like, you know, that's okay. You know, it's okay for them to be sort of like gags or spoofs or whatever. There's a section where they're going to all the different universes and like recruiting the characters. And mostly that felt kind of like weird to me. And like, you know, like they were really just sort of like digging through the catalog of like, you know, man, what properties have we not really done anything within 15, 20 years that we can do something? But there's a moment where like they visit the Mad Max Fury Road, and the Wile E. Coyote character like spray paints his mouth and has the little sign that says "Witness me," and I'm like, that's inspired. That's good shit. If that style of joke was all the way through the movie, like I would be here just like saying, watch it now, go see this now. This is amazing. That was super good. And the other gag I really liked was also Wile E. Coyote. So whoever was like in charge of writing that character for this did a good job. In the basketball game itself, like he wheels out the little like Acme thing, and he makes the multiplier, and he's like throwing the balls in there, and it's just like, and it's a little callback to when they say ball earlier, and it shoots from the little ball shooter thing. So that was a really good gag that like both fit the character, fit the insanity of the moment, and also sort of like did a callback reference to what we've seen through the movie. So those were 2 really good moments that I really enjoyed.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad I'm glad we got something out of the movie for Will, right? Because that leaves a little bit of space for another movie to be the worst one of the year, right? If it doesn't have those little things, then it's going to fall below this one, right?
This is very, 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 very true. There is there are years where if this had come out against some of the other movies that have been kind of the thing that pissed me off the most, this would have like been way above those things. So like, yeah, I guess technically there is a floor and this is not at the floor. So that should worry me, but I don't know. It also means there's a lot of ceiling too.
So we were talking about Lola Bunny earlier, and I mentioned I really loved sort of her introduction in this film. There's some chat going on right now, and Gummy Brick, whoever you are, Gummy Brick mentions the back and forth to get Lola from Wonder Woman and Daffy from DC Universe was a little clunky, and I agree with that a little bit. Although both those moments were big highlights in the film for me. Being able to hear the Wonder Woman music while Lola was like running the obstacle course for the Amazons was really, really fun. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
And then Daffy Duck, like, you know, pretending to be Superman for a movie or whatever, was a little cringe. But the reason
that was cringe. Yeah.
The reason that I liked that scene had nothing to do with Daffy Duck or Porky Pig. It was that they used the John Ottman version of John Williams' Superman title march. I heard that music and like instantly I was a kid again, and it made me very, very happy.
Yeah, I am of a split mind there. I didn't like the Superman Daffy Duck stuff at all. That whole segment was really cringe, I thought. And I'm glad you appreciated the music, Brad. That subtlety in the music, I guess. But I did really dig the Lola Wonder Woman thing. Maybe that was because it was fresh in my mind, and you know, we had just seen a bad Wonder Woman movie about a year. Was it a year ago now? I don't know when it was.
It was Christmas, but is this a better Wonder Woman movie?
That I tell you what, Lola as redoing Wonder Woman with Lola, the first movie might be something I would watch as kind of a short. You know what I mean? I would watch it.
You know, there's a thing that's happening on sort of like the Disney Plus platform right now where and I don't think these are good. Don't get me wrong. The thing I'm about to reference are bad, but I think the nugget there is Jim. I think you're right on with. Over on Disney Plus, they've been doing these like Simpsons shorts where like when something comes out like Mandalorian or Loki, they'll do these little like shorts that are like, you know, Loki bouncing through Springfield, or like it's Star Wars, but with Maggie as the main character. And they're not good. They're not good. They're not for me. But the idea of, I mean, if you do have this shared universe of things, you could do a Lola Bunny Amazon like 5-minute short and do some like, you know, play with like the heroics of it, but also like let it be a Looney Tunes thing and let it be a little wacky and kind of let those things. You can play with those properties and find that like fun spot where they meet in the middle. So HBO Max, get on this. Do exactly this. Jim has a good idea.
Here's a little bit of a pushing that idea a little bit. What about in front of Warner Brothers movies, you know, especially Family Fare or superhero DC universe stuff, is putting like a short in front of those movies, kind of like Pixar does, right, with their movies, and have like a little animated short and have like the Looney Tunes characters, you know, kind of doing superhero stories or maybe origin stories for these Looney Tunes superhero characters. I think that could be a lot of fun. They could actually build a mini Looney Tunes superhero universe by doing that if they did several of them, you know?
Oh no.
I would watch like a full like, you know, the little Wile E. Coyote doing Mad Max. You extend that out into a full 5-minute short with like, you know, Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote doing their normal shit, but also there's like, you know, guys like leaping to their deaths with spears, you know, like fuck it. Like you could it doesn't have to be superheroes. It could be just like taking the little premise of that middle section of the movie, which didn't have time to breathe and was both too long for what it was, but also so packed with so many things that it didn't get a chance to let any of the jokes breathe. You could just take some of those and just make them their own thing and let those jokes breathe.
I brought up like Looney Tunes and superhero stuff together. I think I'm going to get slapped down by one of our comic book bear friends. I think maybe, I don't know, Bill. I think Bill had a comment. Bill Z. Hey, Bill Z had a comment. I think maybe, or that's the start of a comment. He typed in they. Is that a property? Does anybody know?
I think he may have accidentally hit enter too early.
Oh, maybe.
That, or he's correcting. Did we use a pronoun or something? Maybe, or I don't know. Maybe he's correcting us.
I hope not.
All right.
Well, I may have misstepped. Don't cancel me, please.
Well, either way, Bill Z, good to have you in the chat with us. Hello and welcome. Guys, we got just a few minutes left to talk about this one before we move on to old. Did you want to just chat for a quick second about the Michael Jordan cameo?
Sure.
Yeah, Michael Jordan appeared in the movie. That was a visual gag that went on about a minute and a half too long.
And it was only a minute and a half. So how's that grab you?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I feel like they had to do this thing where they realized one of the things that Sylvester was the one that brought like Michael B. Jordan into the
not Michael
into
A.
the locker
Jordan,
room.
Michael B. Jordan.
But this is after saying, I found Michael Jordan and he's coming in here, guys. And so in comes Michael B. Jordan. They all go like, oh, okay, wrong Michael Jordan. But Sylvester says this thing where he's like, oh, I thought it was him. And then I think they realized the idea of like, well, we don't want to say these two dudes look the same because that's like not a good look for you, Sylvester. So he then says, well, it's been 25 years. He like had to like do that. And it lampshaded so much within that it felt even clunkier than it was.
Yeah. It was weird. It was very weird.
I did like seeing Michael B. Jordan though. He's really cool. Like, wouldn't it have been cool if he? And this maybe gets back to Sean's earlier comment. They said they could have chose someone else who doesn't have a high status like LeBron, for this movie. The problem is they already set the precedent in the first movie, like NBA superstar. So they're like, who's our next NBA superstar? Well, obviously LeBron is the obvious choice. But if they had written the movie differently and you didn't have like a LeBron James, you had a fictional star, you know what I mean? A fictional character, somebody who could act and actually present a character instead of a caricature of, like LeBron James. It might have been a more pleasant movie. I don't know.
So one thing that I would have changed here. So the first one had a few real life stars. The villains were 5 like big, like Patrick Ewing, like Charles Barkley. Those were like the enemy basketball team, sort of. But you also had Bill Murray and Wayne Knight, who were like played themselves in the first one. And Bill Murray was actually on the court, like playing basketball for parts of it. So this Michael B. Jordan thing felt like it didn't work, but it could have been the setup to something that did. So imagine you have the same thing, maybe you shorten it up a little bit because it did go too long. And then later on, like, I don't know, like Elmer Fudd, like gets like, or Yosemite Sam like shoots the ball and gets kicked out of the game or whatever because you can't do that or whatever. And they say, well, let's get Michael Jordan, and then they bring in Michael B. Jordan for like around. He's just like, guys, I'm telling you, I'm not good at basketball. I'm an actor. Like they could have really like turned that into a joke if you do like the repetition thing of it. Like instead it was just sort of like left there on the table and kind of slid off. It needed jokes. That's what this needed. This needed jokes.
But it was good jokes.
It needed jokes. It didn't need. So we have this scene where like Porky Pig raps in this, but he gives like the worst, cringiest, like lamest, like my name's Porky Pig and I'm here to say like that kind of rap. Like it's not very good.
That's a good Porky Pig, Will. That's a pretty good Porky Pig.
But if he had started off kind of like shitty, and then he's got that like thing. If he had gone into like a really like rapid fire, like like kind of rap doing his little thing, that could have at least been funny. You could have done the same like stupid joke about Porky Pig rapping and made it funny if you just sort of like played with the format of it instead of just like putting the joke like the rap out there and saying like, well, he rapped, you must be impressed. I don't know.
Yeah.
Was it weird for either of you to have gun violence in a kid's cartoon movie?
Was it? It was gun shooting. Was it gun violence though?
Well, like the funnyization of guns for kids.
That was a little weird. I would have preferred they didn't do that, even though. But that's a tough one, right? Because that's part of the Yosemite Sam character from way back, and maybe that's why. I'm sure that's one of the reasons that has contributed to the gun problems we have, whether you think we have or not, in this country. But it's part of the character, and I think they just wanted to bring that iconic part of the character back to the screen, and I think they probably could have avoided it.
Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam have always been like gun-toting characters.
Yeah.
Hell, even in the first Space Jam, they do like a Pulp Fiction / Reservoir Dogs like reference, and like the two of them like pull out fucking handguns and fire them, like not like like giant like blunderbusses or like kind of like old-timey looking revolvers. They had just like some straight up like straps that they blasted someone with in the last one. So I don't know, it didn't really stand out to me. It just felt like Yosemite Sam being Yosemite Sam.
I think part of the other reason it stood out is because that scene was in the trailer as well. And it's one of those things, sometimes you see a trailer, right? Especially for a comedy movie, when there's a gag in the trailer, right? They have to put some gags in the trailer to give you an idea of what's coming in the movie. And then if you've seen that 3 times and then the movie comes along, it's obviously not going to be, it's going to land very clunkily because you've seen it before. Right. And I think that was part of it. Plus the whole gun thing. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to get into it. I'm just at a point in my movie watching where I'd prefer that I didn't watch gun violence movies, but that's just me.
I don't know. I had a thought about it because when we were walking out of the movie, there was a little kid who was going like this, like finger guns. And I was just like, oh my gosh, he's totally replicating what he just saw.
He took out of the movie, really.
That's what he got from the movie. Like another, well, anyway, we don't want to get too political, but it just struck me as a little weird. So anyway, any final thoughts before we wrap up here and jump into old?
Look, if you want to see a movie where the grainy cartoon does like the slow motion 360 Matrix kick, this is going to be 100% your jam, and you should watch it right now. If that does not sound interesting or timely to you, then there's other things on that, even on that same streaming platform, that might be worth watching. Or if you want a good animated movie about a parent and a kid who are clashing over which passion they should follow, and realizing that they should both like be able to respect each other for having different passions. Mitchell's versus the Machines came out earlier this year, and it is like the same message, but like a leaps and bounds better movie. So go watch that instead. Take your kid, fire up Netflix and watch that with your kid.
All right. Jim, any final thoughts for you?
No, not really. Like I said, I don't know. Our experience was there were 3 of us that went to see this movie together. And I think that was part of the fun for me, is being with, well, I don't know what your experience was like. Were you just watching at home alone, or like with Scott, or did you go to the movies maybe with Scott and some friends? I don't know what your movie experience was, but we kind of had fun. We don't talk and yuck it up too much in the movie theater, but once in a while we'll needle each other like, hey, did you see, did you see that? And that kind of makes it more fun for us. And then I think that's why a lot of the reason why I kind of fall on the positive side for this movie. That plus when I heard that applause at the end, I'm like, okay, this movie hit for somebody. And I think that's awesome.
I'll be honest, there was a dad of a family of 12 sitting right in front of us who laughed at every fucking joke in this movie. So
that makes it fun, more fun though, right? I mean, that experience.
I was jealous that he was having that experience. I won't lie, but that tells me this movie is for some people, and a lot of people, maybe who are not me. I have a weird comedy funny bone as it is. But people are enjoying it, and I'm glad that they are. Even if this wasn't something I super strongly recommend, hey, we got Looney Tunes on the big screen again. It's a win.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll never begrudge someone having a better time with the movie than me. Yeah, that's awesome
for sure. All right, well, fellas, we're getting a little long in the tooth in our review of Space Jam. You might even say our review is getting old. What?
It's already old.
Yeah, mic drop. Jim, Will, are you ready to change things up and jump into our review of Old?
Yeah, let's hit the beach.
Yep, I'm ready.
All right,
then ready to go.
Here we go. Our discussion of M. Night Shyamalan's Old. Alrighty, Will. So spoiler-free, of course, for the first 15 minutes or so. We're diving into our discussion of Old. If you wouldn't mind, Will, just giving us a brief setup for this film and your initial thoughts. Was this worth checking out, or is it a skipper?
Yeah. So, Old is the new movie by M. Night Shyamalan. It's based off of a graphic novel, actually, that was done by Pierre Oscar Levy and Frederick Peters. The premise here is we've got this family that's going on this tropical holiday, and there they are invited to check out this very secluded beach where they get to relax for a few hours as part of their getaway. There they are joined by a few other people who are staying at the same resort, and they all soon realize that there's something on this beach that is causing them to age very, very, very rapidly, reducing essentially their lives to the course of a day. First of all, the praise. This is a cool premise. I love kind of these weird little ideas like this, where it really takes something that I haven't seen, or at least haven't seen in this format before, and lets us see what our characters would do with this sort of sci-fi premise. I also love the idea when those same sci-fi premises can be used as sort of an allegory for something else, the way that we experience time, the way that we value the moments that we share with people, whether life may feel fleeting, but it's what's most important is the people around us. That's cool. I love stuff like that. I love when we can explore the human condition through sci-fi. But boy, did this movie slog through the middle for me. There is a long section in the middle of this film where it feels like we kind of get where it's going, but we haven't gotten there yet. So we just have to sort of play out the scenes. And in some cases that could work, but here I think the dialogue is very clunky in a lot of places, and so it feels like there's not as much to really grip you, even with okay, cool, well maybe it's not getting where it's supposed to go, but maybe I can spend some more time with these characters or whatever. But man, it's just there wasn't a lot to really grab onto. For what it's worth, the actors did a pretty good job. I especially liked we had Vicky Creeps here. We had Thomasin McKenzie. We had Alex Wolff. We had what's his name? Rufus Sewell. He showed up just absolutely to chew the scenery, and I was here for that. I liked the actors. I liked the premise. I liked maybe the first 20-30 minutes of the movie, but it just loses steam. Even the ending, I feel like robs some of the rest of the movie, some of its poignancy. So gosh, yeah, if he were to remake this movie and make it a 45-minute, if M. Night Shyamalan had a 45-minute to an hour-long Twilight Zone type series where he had to tell these types of stories, but they were condensed into a much shorter time frame, and this film was turned into the lead episode of that, I think this would go over gangbusters. I think this is a really cool idea that needed some condensing. Yeah. So do I recommend it? I can't. I can't super recommend this one, which is a shame. M. Night Shyamalan has been on a bit of an uptick for me. I thought The Visit was weird but inspired. I thought Split was really damn good. But this just feels like a return to kind of the Shyamalan, who I'm not as big a fan of. So yeah, it's a light pass, but it's still a pass.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for weighing in. Appreciate that. Jim, how about for you? Do you agree that this was a pass, or is this something you would recommend?
Yeah, I'm going to be on the side of light recommend. This movie didn't bowl me over, and I think that's part of the issue with this movie as far as maybe how others and how audiences are receiving this movie. It's I think with M. Night Shyamalan, I think we've come to kind of expect the big twist, right? And the big twist is going to just come out of nowhere and blow us away, and we're going to be, oh my God, no one's and this movie really didn't have that. It had an ending, and we'll talk about that in spoilers. It had kind of a central mystery, I will say that. That was, and we'll get into that in spoilers too. But for me, I thought, even though it lacked kind of that huge surprise, even though I was surprised, it kind of lacked that wallop of a surprise ending. I did appreciate what this movie did with the ending. I wish it had done a little bit more with that ending. And Will, I agree with you. I think the middle was drawn out. You're watching these people on the beach age. You're watching how that affects them, how it affects their interactions with each other. Because some of them are family with each other. Some of them are strangers that are just meeting. So that's kind of an interesting study in human relations, right? And how they get along in times of stress and how they cope. I thought that was pretty interesting, but it did kind of drag out a little bit. But yeah, for me, this is a soft recommend. But I would say just don't go into it expecting like that huge M. Night Shyamalan twist. By the way, not all his movies have a twist, but they do usually have reveals. And your mileage may vary on those. But to me, the more I think about this movie, the more I think I appreciate it and liked it. It entertained me. It kept me engaged the whole time. So yeah, I'm in the slightly on the positive side for this one.
I don't normally ask follow-up questions, but I'm going to. Jim, What is the difference in your mind between a reveal and a twist?
A twist is when the movie has you thinking like it's heading toward what everybody feels is like a plot point, right? But then that plot point ends up being something totally different and like 180 different from what everybody's expecting. This movie wasn't quite that. This was like, oh my God, what's going on? We see what's happening. Why? The movie gets to that eventually at the end, but I wouldn't call it a twist.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that clarification. I think that helps shed a little bit of light on your thinking here. So this is a soft recommend from Jim. This is a pass from Will. Guys, thanks so much, as always, for giving us your thoughts. For me, this movie, I guess it's a soft recommend. If you are looking for something to watch and you don't have a lot of options and you're really craving something new, then totally see this. But honestly, I would say this is more of a watch at home than like watch, at the theater. Again, unless you're looking to get out into the world and, see a film. We kind of are right now, so we totally get that. I was not super jazzed with this film. The premise is pretty interesting. Of course, it's in the trailers that people are aging, kids become adults, and all kinds of crazy stuff happens. Someone ends up pregnant on the beach. What happened there? So it's great to be able to watch the film and kind of see the events play out and like understand the structure of things. The reveal, again, without getting into spoilers, I mean, I don't know. It didn't really do a whole lot for me, but definitely definitely one of those films that does, just pepper you with a lot of questions about this situation and what's going on and why are people doing the things that they're doing. A bit of an interesting character study with some of the gosh, this is so hard to talk about without spoilers, but just some of the ailments and things that people have on this beach. So anyway, I'm looking forward to chatting about this with you fellas as we get into spoilers. But again, soft recommend if you're looking for something to watch. But for me personally, just wasn't super great. But Bruce in the chat says, my son and I went to Old hoping for an unintentionally funny, dumb movie. We weren't disappointed. Also, I was able to embarrass my son as I laughed at some of the stupidity. So bonus points. Well, there you go. Thanks, Bruce. Sounds like you had a fun experience there.
Dumb can be fun sometimes. Dumb fun can be still fun.
I mean, there's something to be said for sort of like, if you're going to be in the theater anyway, making your fun, like if the movie's not going to give you the fun, kind of making your fun. I remember the screening of Cats that I went to. There was a moment about a third of the way through that movie where the audience that was just sort of like sitting there stone-faced and not enjoying it, we all just decided, hey, it's okay if we like laugh at this and like enjoy the fact that we're not enjoying this. And it became a great screening of a bad movie as a result. So I totally get that.
Yeah, and there were some interesting, I don't know if effective is, I would put totally effective, but there's some interesting kind of body horror things going on in this movie as people age, and we'll get into spoilers with that were kind of off-putting. Off-putting isn't the right word, but disturbing, right? A little bit disturbing. I think some of them were meant to be disturbing and some that didn't. I don't think they had the intended effect. Like I was disturbed in a different way. Like, okay, that's kind of disturbing, but like it's still dumb, right? It's like, what are you doing? It's dumb. And we'll get into that a little bit.
Well, guys, it's increasingly difficult to talk about this without spoilers. Yeah. So what do we say? We just unveil the spoilers and get to it.
Sure.
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right. So, folks, you have gotten a chance to hear our initial thoughts on Old. If it's something that's helpful to you, I'm glad. But we're going to go ahead and get into some spoiler talk, meaning if you haven't seen Old yet and you want to, go in fresh, this is your time. We're not doing plugs this week, so you have our permission officially to step away and come back next week. But spoilers are happening right now. I want to go back to something that Bruce said a minute ago. It was the second part of his comment. I didn't want to read it until we got into spoilers. But Bruce says, also, Karen in a cave. Wow. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. Throwing rocks at your head.
Hey, yeah.
Is that that's
one with the body horror that you were talking about?
That's some of
right,
the body
Jim?
horror I was talking about.
Yeah.
And then there's another scene earlier on that involved a tumor. That was very weird. And this movie was just weird enough to be interesting. Like there was some weird things that happened, to kind of keep you a little creeped out. Like there's a little girl who ages and becomes pregnant by, a little boy that you saw like 5 minutes earlier. And you're like, what? That just feels really weird to me. Like, I don't know. There was some stuff around that kind of made me feel, let's just say, uncomfortable. Probably intentionally so, but probably not in the right way either.
Well, I think the problem here is that I think that Shyamalan as a director, I think that he really is really focused on sort of like setting up his revealers twist or kind of like whatever kind of like that big moment is going to be. And again, I don't think that that's necessarily a fault all the time. I think sometimes that is a compelling way to build a mystery and reveal one. But when you have the moments where you just have to let the film present your like supporting evidence for what that twist is going to be, that's where I feel like he falls apart a little bit. Here we get to the moments where we get to experience like, what is it like for these characters to experience aging? Because the body horror stuff, I don't think he's particularly good at it here.
No,
I think it feels clunky. It doesn't feel terrifying, whereas it should feel terrifying. It doesn't feel gross or sad. It feels like, oh, huh, okay, I guess that's what he did there. And that's not the right, that's not the emotional, like feeling that I think we're supposed to get from those things. Can you imagine if this same film were like done by like some of the other like really solid like directors who are kind of like up and coming right now? Like, give me like a Jordan Peele or an Ari Aster or an Eggers on this exact same property. And I think you can take this premise and make each of those would make very, very different films, but I think probably better in all three of those cases.
Yeah, I had a hard time with the body horror. Jim, you mentioned the tumor scene. And I want to go back to that for a second. There were no stakes in that scene. It was like, oh, they cut her open and it heals right away. Okay, I guess they can mutilate her all they want. It's just going to heal in like 5 seconds anyway. So I wasn't like concerned that she was going to die or they weren't, going to be able to succeed. Even the gore of doing it, like they're opening her up. Like there should be blood like shooting out and like obviously they're cutting arteries and it was like PG-13 gore as opposed to like actual fucking gore.
Yeah, it was just so simplified, I guess, that it didn't it came across to me as dumb because everyone knows the world it wouldn't necessarily work that way. But in this world of accelerated aging, we don't really know what's going on because at some points they had to come in with lines of exposition and explain, oh, well, the hair and nails don't grow because they're dead cells. And I'm like, that's bullshit because they grow out of living cells. Like, you know what I mean? The hair and nails themselves are dead, but like what causes them to grow are living cells that sprout those things. So that's bullshit. And tumors, like you don't just make an incision and then like a tumor pops out. Like those things are attached to shit, like in your body. Like they have to be like carefully excised out of there. You don't just reach in and grab it like a fucking avocado, like pull it out of the shopping cart.
Well, and that's a good point because I think that, and I don't want to get like down in the like
I know
cinema weeds of like of that because that's to me like is not where I usually like to spend the time on these, but there is some inconsistencies in sort of like the way that the world worked, and it did take me out quite a bit. The treatment of the tumor, right? Like oh, everything's healing up super quick, but she's not bleeding out extra quick, even though the tumor is growing extra quick. But then when like they kill someone with rust later on, like that's like, oh, it just goes to the body. The baby dies after a few seconds. Because he didn't get enough attention and he died of neglect, even though everyone else is experiencing like
the same
like time and real time stuff like that. And again, that's nitpicky shit, and it really doesn't matter. The idea is to set up like these moments of how aging impacts things like that. But it really did like when I do struggle with figuring out how a movie's rules works, I sometimes find myself like really focused on that and sort of taken out of the moment.
Yeah, and it really had the bare bones amount of rules, most of which didn't make sense to hang its premise on, unfortunately, right? I don't know, if they just weren't thought through enough or just, kind of thrown on the screen. But can we get to the comment, Rustemeyer's comment?
Yes.
We sure as fuck can. Bruce says, can we talk about the mid-sized sedan in the room?
Yeah. That was pretty much the one joke in the movie. I don't know if that was an intentional joke or what, but it came across as a joke to me. So one of the guys on the beach is, I think, he's a DJ or a musician.
He's a rapper.
Like a rapper, yeah.
He's a rapper, right? And he's a notable rapper because one of the other guests recognizes him. And his name is Mid-Size Sedan. Where the heck does that come from? Like, I don't know. But I kind of snickered at that part.
I mean, I laughed too, but like, I don't think it was an intentional laugh. Like, it feels like It feels like when you talk, and this is going to sound really shitty, but like it sounds like when you talk to someone who's like really, really, really old. I'm talking, just like it's like a few generations above you, and they're talking about, oh, I'm not going to listen to rap with some mid-size sedan or whatever. Like it sounds like that type of like name for a rapper, and I felt like the fact that made it into the script and then made it into the movie, and then you give the character who has that silly name. Like you only give him the dialogue of saying "damn" every so often, and then having him be like abused by a racist through the whole movie. It was like really fucking uncomfortable what they did with like that character. They could have done literally anything else, or if you are going to have like an exploration of like the way mental illness can cause racism, which it's problematic by itself.
Or bring out racism that's already there.
But if you're gonna do that, I think that there's ways to do that tactfully. And boy, howdy, this did not do it tactfully.
Yeah. Did anybody else? I know there's an actor here who was in Lost, right? Ken Lung.
Yes.
Is in this, right? And I'm looking at him like I know this guy from something, and I can't figure out what it is. And in my other side of the brain is like, God, this movie has some elements that are reminding me of Lost a little bit, right? You have this kind of island, this mysterious stuff going on. It reminds me of Lost, and I wasn't putting the two together in my head until after the movie. But it reminded me of Lost, and it reminded me of that new show that's out called The White Lotus a little bit. If anybody's watching White Lotus, there was some, set at a weird, quirky story set at a like a tropical resort, right? And then, with a lot of beach scenes. So I was getting a lot of weird references to other stuff while I was watching this.
Yeah.
One.
Jim, you mentioned Lost. I recognized the actor right away from Lost, and it's funny because if you've seen Lost, I guess mild spoilers for that show. Some characters have random nosebleeds, and they don't know why, and that's happening while the same actor is involved. So I was totally getting like flashbacks to Lost on that. I'm waiting for the fucking smoke monster to like show up in a cave or something.
And the coral.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah.
The graphic novel. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, no, you go. Well,
I was going to say the graphic novel that this is based on. It takes away a lot of the Shyamalan like framing of it. Like the entire movie takes place on the beach. Like they show up on the beach. It ends on the beach. There's no mid-size sedan. He's an Algerian character. There's like some racism like that's directed towards him, but like his story arc is sort of like telling everyone this like parable about this like king who's visited by death. And the ultimate story is all about these like people who all realize that like, yeah, like our lives are now just a day instead of, decades and decades and decades. But what's still important are these moments. And so when they come to grips with like that, when they come to grips with their mortality, they decide to just enjoy that moment and build sandcastles in the sand, which are fleeting, but also something they create together. And it's poignant and it's sad because this thing is happening to them. But it really like hammers home the kind of like the message here. And M. Night Shyamalan still has that message here in the movie. I think that's still like a big part of it. But then once the characters come to that realization, he then tacks on a bunch of like, well, here's the plot that happens after that. And I felt like it really robbed like that moment of like introspection. And instead I was left going like with the, will they get away? And what's the final twist going to be? And I didn't like that.
He could have leaned into that more poignant stuff a little bit more, I think, and it might have been a better movie for it. Let's talk about kind of that plot stuff at the end a little bit. Like, what the heck happens? Like when people, so two guests swim through the coral cave, right? And they disappear, I guess. Like, or I guess they popped up. Did they drown? No, well, they popped up somewhere else, right?
You're talking about the ones that get away, the main characters.
Yeah. Maddox and
Trent.
Whatever. Trent. Maddox.
Right, because they swim out at the end to the coral because of the message they got.
But there's two people that figured it out before them who swam out, or one person and totally drowned.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the Ken Lung character?
No. They just mentioned back at the hotel. They're like,
yes.
oh, the last guy drowned, So,
Right.
Anyway. Yeah.
But anyway, they swam out, and then like supposedly M. Night is like looking out for them. They never surface anywhere around. Like, where the fuck did they go? Like, that was really clunky. I thought that was super clunky. Like, it wasn't explained very well. And at the end and then after everything happens, they show them popping up somewhere like further out or whatever. And it didn't make sense to me. But what I thought was kind of cool, and I wish they had done something more with this too, is that these people were there for an experiment, right? For medical experimentation, right? There was this naturally occurring phenomenon on this beach that made people age. There was this lab, a corporation or lab that knew about this phenomenon and would put people in this situation so that they could study the accelerated effects of medical medicines as treatments, right, over a long period of time. And that's kind of a cool thing, although I don't know if it needed to be in this movie. Like, I think you're right. I think if they had leaned kind of more into the like, hey, this is our lives are condensed into one day. This is what we have. This is the life we have, and they had kind of leaned into that premise a little bit and how it affected those people, and that was it. That might have been cool, although probably for another filmmaker, because M. Night Shyamalan has to put in his reveal, right? His plot thing.
That's why I'd love to see, again, like Ari Aster do something like this. I think he could tell like this type of story and like still have the horror elements there, but still hit the thematic elements and let the scenery like really allow like the cinematography to be a stronger part of it than I think we saw here. Or hell, even give me someone like we've seen some really great dramas lately from people like Lulu Wang or Chloe Zhao or people like that, who I think could capture the human aspect of this. So, I mean, yeah, basically what I'm saying is like get like a top tier director to make this movie and it'll be better, which is probably a pretty reductive statement. But at the same time, I say that because there's something here that I liked. There is like, this isn't like a premise where I'm just like, well, fuck it, move on to the next. There's something here that I think really could have been something special if it had been given a different focus and more care. And it's disappointing when you see something this sort of original and fresh just get squandered. So that's yeah.
I'm still on board for the next thing M. Night does, though. I mean, because he's one of those directors or filmmakers where he'll be hit and miss. Like, but when he hits, I mean, his stuff is definitely rewarding to watch. So I'll be waiting for his next one.
Me too, unfortunately. Yeah.
I'm a little split
on
that, but no. Wow. Yeah, I don't know. I'm always curious what the big reveal or twist is going to be with an M. Night Shyamalan movie. And, God love him. That's got to be a hard position for him to be in as a movie maker, to keep surprising people, 30 years now. He's been making movies, 20 years, whatever it is, like constantly trying to outsmart the audience and give them something mind-blowing is probably not an easy job.
At this point, if M. Night Shyamalan made a movie where at the beginning of the movie, they it was super obvious that like Brad was the murderer. And at the end, it was just revealed that, it was Brad was the murderer all along and there's no twist. At that point, would that be like the biggest twist possible? Is the absence of a twist a big twist for M. Night Shyamalan?
I think it could be. Yeah.
That's what I want to see now. Yeah. Right? He's got to be setting that one up.
Twist.
He gets one of those. I think at this point he's built up enough twists that he gets one of those, and it would work.
I just want to see him like overlording a game of Twister.
Yeah,
like each colored dot is one of his movies, and anyway. Blah, blah, blah. All right. So, any final thoughts on Old before we wrap this mofo up?
Oh, put me on the spot. Boy, I just I know there was something else I wanted to mention about this movie, and now I forgot what it was. So you're up, I guess.
For me, I think that the thing that Shyamalan's been doing well with lately, he said this at the Q&A for Split, which I was very fortunate to be at because it was one that I liked. That when he was doing his first ramp up on his career, they kept giving him, like, the studios would give him, like, here's an infinite amount of money, make these movies. And so he would try to use that, and he would make these stories that were so big that he lost focus on them. So when he partnered up with Blumhouse, who I'm hit or miss on Blumhouse, but like their partnership was really based around, we're going to give you a micro budget and use that as restraints. And he said in that Q&A, man, having like to think creatively about how I'm going to spend my money and how I'm going to do my shots actually made me a better filmmaker for it. And this one was not with Blumhouse. This one was over with, I think, Universal proper. I don't know what the budget is on it, but I feel like I really do feel like, man, Shyamalan just needs to go back to Jason Blum and just say, give me the smallest budget that we can allow and let me tell stories again. Because I think that's where he really shines.
Yep. And I'll be there to watch it.
All right. Awesome. Well, great discussion as always. Let's let people know where they can chat with us between now and the next time we record. Jim, where can folks find you online?
Find me on Twitter. That's where I dabble in movie talk at JJP Out West. My initials JJP. The words Out West all together at JJP Out West, or find me under my name, Jim Pugliafico, on Facebook.
All right. Thanks so much. Will, how about you?
Yeah, look for me on Twitter. I'm at Whatever Cove. You can find me on Facebook. I'm William Lindis there. Send me a message first so I know that you're a real person and not a bot. I also post and log very regularly at letterboxd.com. Just search for William Lindis there. If you give me a follow, I will follow you back.
All right, awesome. And you can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at iBradPro, or on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm the one who likely has Chub Chaser Bear friends in common with you. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, folks, in the live chat tonight. We had a ton of people. A lot of comments. We didn't get to read them all, unfortunately, but it was fun following you folks along in the chat. We look forward to being part of your daily commutes, your weekly lawn mowing, whenever you enjoy our show. Thanks for making us part of your life. We appreciate you very much, everybody, and we'll see you all next time. Goodbye, folks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That's all, folks.
Aw.